What's up, guys? It's Drifts and Lifts here. All right, so today's episode, we got some Volvo junkyard finds on the list. So I hopped across the border, I cruised down to Arlington, Washington, and I'm hitting my first pick and pull of the day. So we're gonna go to 3 other pick and pulls today. This is the first one, and we have a couple pretty cool Volvos in this yard. So I'm just gonna, check out some old Volvos basically in some junkyards. So right here we have a 1990 760 GLE. So unfortunately, someone already took the taillights out of it because these ones have the longer taillights than the 740s. So these are actually pretty rare because these only came on the 1990 and I believe the 91, if there was such a thing, 760 GLE. So that's too bad, but it does have a set of headlights in it that I might snag. So this is a V6 car. Interesting car. These motors weren't too great. The red block was a much, people like the red block a lot better than these engines, but yeah, you don't see these in the junkyards too often, to be honest. I never actually really looked at the exhaust manifolds on these things. They're pretty interesting. Come over there. So this one came with like a gray, pretty nice gray paint job. I like this color actually. It's got the gray interior. The interior is not in too bad of shape, honestly. The 760s had a really different cool dash style compared to the 740s. It was a little more updated. The whole dash was different. Center section in there, a lot different. So this was the top of the line Volvo that you could get at the time, more or less. It had, power seats and that kind of thing, whereas most of the 740s and that stuff had, manual seats. It's a shame because a lot of these Volvos that you see in the junkyard, they're actually still in pretty good shape, but usually they get sent to the junkyard because of one little issue, one little problem. So this is an independent suspension car. So it's got the IRS in the back. I've actually never really messed with these at all. I've never owned an IRS car. I've kind of stayed away from them for a reason. The solid axle are much easier to weld and modify, and we have a pretty good setup for them, so I've never really wanted to venture into modifying one of these, but it would be kind of interesting. Like, you can get some pretty good camber out of them, but for drifting you don't really want camber in the back, so that's why the solid axle is superior. Pretty cool car. Too bad that it went to the scrapper. I'm sure someone would have enjoyed this car for a long time. So next to it we got this 240 Volvo. So it's a 240 wagon. Looks pretty picked apart. It's got a cool roof rack on the top. Gold color. It's actually pretty much the same gold color as Al, my gold sedan. Yeah, definitely picked apart, man. Like, someone actually took the dash out and this thing has been stripped right out. Big wiring harness mess. Steering columns drop down. We got the AW70 transmission chilling there. Even the steering rack is, someone took that out, the whole subframe, the engine. This thing's been completely picked apart. Thank you for your service. All right, so there's one more Volvo in this yard we're gonna go check out. It's right down a couple rows that way, so let's head over there. All right, guys, so here we have a 1985 GLE 740. So this is a pretty old girl. It's got the classic old school cam gear on it. I think some of the earlier models had this cam gear with only like 2 holes in it. The later ones had a bunch of slits in it. So it looks like a okay car. Unfortunately, they took the headlights out of it, which is what I came here to get. That's all right though. So it's the GLE. It's got all the chrome on it. I should probably pull that, but it's so hard to take this off without destroying it. Every single time I end up wrecking it. So this car is pretty picked apart though. You know what, the one thing it does have is these mud flaps that maybe I should take off, because you don't really see these on too many. Those almost might look pretty cool on the gold car. I think for the gold car I want to throw a lot of accessories on it. It has the louvers. We're going to get some sort of spoiler on it, hopefully a roof spoiler as well. Maybe if we could get these mud flaps, that would be pretty cool. So yeah, unfortunately this car is pretty basic. It's just automatic transmission. I guess in Europe, basic would be the manual transmission, but most of our cars here came with an automatic, so it's pretty cool if you do find a manual one in the junkyards. So this thing has 171,000 miles on it, which honestly isn't too much. So this was one of the earlier 740s, so this one would have most likely more rust. Like I can actually see under here starting to rust a bit in there. This one wouldn't have been zinc coated, so the metal is more likely to rust. These ones have the bad wiring harness issues in 85 up until, or 84 up until 87. The wiring harnesses were pretty bad, so I'd almost be willing to bet that this one's starting to crust pretty bad. Yeah, like check this out, guys. See how this wiring harness is like falling apart completely? It's literally crusting in my hand right there. So that's what happens because they used biodegradable wiring harness stuff. So in 1988, they fixed that problem. They changed the wiring harness to a more suitable insulation. Didn't give you that issue anymore. So the earlier 740s were definitely the least reliable of them. They hadn't quite worked out all the kinks yet. And then, you know, in the late 80s and then into the 1990s, they figured them out pretty good. So, but anyways, guys, that's the last one in the yard. So I think I'll pull these mud flaps off, and then we're gonna head to another yard about an hour away. All right, guys, so we just arrived at the Linwood pick and pull yard. So this is our first Volvo that I've seen in the yard so far, and this is a really cool Volvo. So super rare car. This is a 1985 740 GLE, but a turbo diesel. So you never find turbo diesels. These are super rare because they only came in the first couple of years of the 740 in North America. But just take a look at this thing. So it's got the blue interior, and I think this seat is a little different than the normal 740 seats. It has like an extra stitching in it or something. Yeah, it's got the full blue. I should almost take these, honestly. Those are like super blue, pretty cool, eh? Huh, maybe I'll snag those for one of my cars. So honestly, the interior is it's a little bit musty. It's got the missing headliner like most of them do, but it looks like somebody already got the good parts off of this. They got the turbo diesel emblem off of the grill, and they also got the turbo diesel emblem off of the back there. So and they actually got the headlights out of the front as well. So whoever got to this car knows what the good parts are. Honestly, you're not going to really pull the motor out of this thing because these engines, I think to run one of these engines, you know, in North America, we don't have a lot of knowledge about them and parts. Really interesting motor though. So I've actually driven one of these cars before. My friend Owen has one, and if you guys have been watching the channel for a long time, you would have seen the video where I actually took his for a rip down the road. It has a manual transmission and that kind of thing, but it's really interesting to look at one of these in the engine bay of a 740. The cool thing is actually this injection pump has the same AFC cover as the injection pump on my first gen Cummins truck that I used to own. So actually I believe this is the same injection pump, just with some minor tweaks or whatever, different size, whatever, this and that, but it's a Bosch VE pump, so pretty cool. So this is the non-intercooled model. When you want to turn these things up, it's really good to put an intercooler in them. But yeah, guys, this thing's really cool. With, you know, the blue door panels, the full blue interior honestly is really nifty. What do these seats look like underneath here? It's got this pretty greasy cover, but pretty cool. I bet you they're not in bad shape. So this is an American car, obviously, and honestly these Volkswagen turbo diesel motors rev fairly high for a turbo diesel. 5,500 RPM is what the needle goes to. Pretty crazy. How many kilometers on this thing? Oh, 90,000 miles. This thing did not deserve to go to to the scrapper and get its headlights and turbo diesel badge taken off. What do you say, guys? Should I take these blue carpets? Those are kind of sweet. All right, so I found another 940 in the yard, and this one's actually kind of interesting. It's a 940 turbo. I'm not too sure what year it is. Says 95. So it's a 95 940 turbo. Looks like it did have an automatic transmission at one point. How many kilometers on this thing? Let's check out the interior. It's got the updated 940 dash. 218 miles on it. So I talk kilometers because I'm from Canada. So it's like 350,000 kilometers. So it's got a squirter motor in it here. This might be useful to somebody. It's got the updated E-fan. I have like a couple of those in the garage, or else I might consider taking that, because these actually are really sweet. You can run them. It's a really good fan, really powerful, really reliable, keeps the motor nice and cool. So yeah, this is a factory turbo. It looks like someone took the 13C off it. So yeah, kind of interesting. It's got this front end, so you know, if you guys know in North America, for the for the European guys in North America, we had this front end, so basically like a 740 front end on the 94 and 95 940s. Some of the 940s had the other kind, but I've seen a bunch with this one as well. So it looks like the windows were smashed at one point, so I'm not too sure what happened to this car. So yeah, interesting car. I think there's one more Volvo in this yard. Yeah, right there. So we got another 940. Let's go check this thing out real quick. So 19, looks like a 94, 95. It's a 940 non-turbo. Doesn't look like it has a turbo on it. This window's smashed as well, just like the other one. It's got the greasy tan interior. Looks like it was pretty torn up at one point. This tan interior is like pretty interesting actually. It's super tan. Check out the front here. Honestly, a pretty clean car. Definitely not too bad. I think did they fix the headliner issue on the 940s? They must have. So it's got this front end. Looks like a pretty pulled apart B230F engine. Someone's already got the head off it. Must have needed it for theirs for some reason. Looks like the car's been sitting for a long time. I'm sure someone neglected it and then just decided to call the tow truck to come pick it up, give them $100 for it or whatever. All right, so on the app I was using, there actually says there's one more Volvo in here, so we're gonna go look for it. I think it's a 740 wagon. All right, so I couldn't find any more Volvos in this yard, so we're gonna head to the next yard. I think that's about an hour away from here, hour south. So yeah, super cool car though, this 740. Make sure you rest in peace, rest in pieces, I suppose. Hopefully some people can get some you know, good parts off this to keep their turbo diesel going, which I don't think many people are doing these days. All right, so here's a little bonus car aside from the Volvos. So this is an old Honda Civic. I don't even know, 1981 it says. So look how rusty this gas filler is. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. It's got the full 80s red interior. Looks pretty torn up. I wonder how many liters of displacement this engine is. Probably 1.4, 1.5, something like that. This thing is pretty crusty. Looks like it's been sitting somewhere in someone's yard for too long. Got a 5-speed manual transmission. Do they even come with automatics? Let us know in the comments. So this is actually another interesting ride in this junkyard, an Oldsmobile Bravada. So this would be the Oldsmobile version of the, what am I trying to think of, the Blazer, I suppose. Oldsmobile Bravada, maybe a little bit more optioned up, a couple more features perhaps. Really interesting though, you don't see too many of these. You usually see all the GMC Chevy versions. All right, so we're on our last yard of the day. So this is the pick and pull yard in Tacoma, Washington. So we got this old gem here. It looks like an 88, I think. Yeah, 88, looks like an NA. It's non-turbo motor, automatic transmission. If you look in here, it looks pretty rough around the edges. It looked like, you know, got a big dent here. But one really cool thing about it, and honestly, all the Volvos that we've seen today, guys, have had some rare, interesting parts about them, and the ox blood red leather interior is pretty cool on this thing. So you don't really see these too often. What do we got for kilometers? 212,000 kilometers, or sorry, I guess I should say miles. So you know, it's up there. It's kind of average. I feel like Volvos these days, a lot of them have this amount of mileage on them. It's a pretty common set of miles. I just love how red these interiors are. There's just so much red going on. It's really sweet. Yeah, honestly, if I had my truck with me or something, maybe I'd consider like pulling out some of this, but it's not in the best shape. As you can see, the sun's kind of warped that one over there. This one's pretty like warped up too, but definitely pretty interesting. I don't think the red would really go well with the gold exterior that my car has, but cool nonetheless. So this car does have one cool part that I may take. You know, these are getting kind of hard to find, these US spec front end pieces, so might pull that out. It looks to be in pretty good shape right now. There's no bends in it or anything. So I think the chrome I also saw somewhere in the car here. So there's the chrome. It's got the tabs broken off, but that's no big deal. You can really see how the sun's actually baked this door panel on the top there. It's all cracking apart. Pretty chalky. All right, so we got an interesting 240 Volvo in the yard here. So this one almost looks like it could be potentially someone who might watch my channel. So it's got this really interesting blue paint job that someone definitely did aftermarket. It looks like it was a NA car, and laying on the ground right here is an M47 transmission. So that actually is, you know, almost considering maybe scooping that up, but I'm not really too sure the condition of it internally. You know, it could be in poor shape. It's tough to say. So this car was definitely owned by an enthusiast of some sort. It's got some aftermarket bushings in the trailing arms here. So it's had a little bit of work done to it. All right, so I snagged this right headlight out of this car. So I don't think I'm gonna take that M47 transmission that's sitting on the ground over there, just because I don't really know the history of it. And I could be paying like $100 for a shitty tranny. And honestly, I don't really need an M47 anymore. I'm gonna be, you know, swapping the gold car over to the BMW ZF transmission as well as the panel wagon. So yeah, I think we're good there. I tell you though, I've never seen on a car green springs like that have turned that way from the earth. So it definitely looks like this car was fairly neglected. One thing I may actually grab, maybe from this car, maybe from the next yard, is a good bumper, because actually the new shell that I'm going to be building with the panel wagon has some bumper damage right here. So it would be nice to have like a perfect clean one. But anyways guys, that's it for this yard. So I'm gonna head to one more yard today, and I think there is potentially a manual 740. It says automatic or manual. I'm not too sure. All right guys, so unfortunately I was unable to get to the last yard in time. Everything actually shut down and we ran out of time. So I ended up heading back to Canada, where I'm from, and now I'm back in my garage here. Figured I would finish the video in here. Kind of funny story I want to tell you guys. There's been a lot of questions and people wondering what it's like going over the border and coming back into Canada with all the crazy restrictions that are going on right now. So this is actually the first time that I have tried to go across into the States and come back into Canada in about 2 to 2.5 years, ever since the whole COVID scams started happening. So going into the States was actually fine. I went in my gold car, Al. So they asked the normal questions, where are you from, where do you work, that kind of thing. And I said, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, all right, have a nice day. Lets me into the States, no worries. So coming back into Canada, came back around 1 o'clock in the morning, and I get to the border, and the border guard asked me, you know, what were you up to? Do you have any things that you bought that you want to bring back? How much did you spend? That kind of thing. I disclosed all that information. Then it came down to the good old, are you vaccinated question? And of course I said no, because I have not taken the Fauci ouchie. Honestly, in my opinion, with all the info that's out now, I think you'd have to be absolutely insane to take it, but we won't really get into that. So when it came down to that question, I said no. And he says, okay, well, that's a bit of an issue. He asked if I have my ArriveCan app. So I guess it's this app you got to fill out, you know, tell them all your information, that kind of stuff. So I said, no, I don't want to participate in any of that. I don't want to take a COVID test. I don't want to do all this nonsense just to get back into the country that I'm from, my home country. So he threatened me with a $5,000 fine, says if you don't comply with the COVID test or get vaccinated, you will be subject to a $5,000 fine if you try to cross back into Canada. And I wasn't gonna go getting a COVID test at 1 o'clock in the morning. I guess they have them there, but you gotta pay money for them. They said you can get them done for free at Walgreens, but that was like an hour back. I would have had to go back the other way about an hour. So I wasn't ready to do that, and I would have had to get a hotel so I can do that in the morning. So I said, no, I don't want to do any of that stuff, honestly. I just want to go back in. So he kept threatening me with a $5,000 fine. I said, all right, well, give me the fine. I just want to get out of here, and I'll dispute it and figure it out later, basically. So then what they did is they got me out of the car. They told me to pull in. The guy searched my car. Obviously nothing in there other than some headlights and stuff, some tools. And then they actually brought me inside. So I had to go talk to the guys, talk to like their supervisor or whatever. And he says, so if you don't have the ArriveCan app, if you don't want to download it, you don't want to take a COVID test, you'll be subject to a $5,000 fine. I said, that's cool. Give me the fine. I'm not taking any of your guys' nonsense, COVID test, frickin', you know, filling out this app, disclosing all my information, blah, 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 just ridiculous. So I denied it all. I refused it all. And the guy was kind of caught off guard. I feel like he hasn't really had many people refuse his orders there. A lot of these border guards are kind of tryhards, and he was kind of like, oh, you don't want to take a COVID test? I was like, nah, I prefer not to stick shit up in my nose and comply with your guys' nonsense. So again, he threatened. He says, so, you know, if you don't go through with this, you're going to get a $5,000 fine. I'm like, hey, give me the damn fine already. I just want to get out of here. So he says, all right, so next you're going to be talking to a public health official, public health officer, whatever you want to call it. And he said, what's your phone number? I didn't want to give him my phone number. I said, I don't have a phone. I don't want to download any app. I don't want people calling me, blah, blah, blah. So he said, okay, well, you're going to have to speak to the public health officer on our phone before you can get out of here. At that point, it kind of seems to me like, sorry, one thing I forgot is I asked, am I being detained or am I free to go? Because they were just holding me there for like an hour to an hour and a half. And it was a bit ridiculous at that point. So I said, am I being detained or am I free to go? And they said, you're not being detained. At that point, I kind of have a feeling I could have just got up and hopped in my car and peaced out, and they probably wouldn't have done anything. But I wasn't really trying to start some stuff. So the guy said, here, talk to the public health officer. He gave me the phone. And interesting, the public health officer on the phone, it almost sounded like an East Indian dude from like a call center. You guys know when you get scam calls, there's always like some random East Indian dude that's trying to scam you. It almost sounded like that, which was kind of weird. He asked me a couple, a bit of information, like what's your address, where do you live? I did give him that information because I didn't really want to lie to him. Wasn't sure if that was going to get me in any shit or not. And again, the public health official threatened me with a $5,000 fine. Said if I don't want to go through with this, you will be subject to a $5,000 fine. I said, okay, let's do it. Let's get it going. I want to get out of here, and I'm not going to comply and, do all that nonsense that you guys want me to do. So he says, okay, give the phone back to buddy guy, security officer at the border there. They talk for a couple minutes. He gets off the phone and he says, all right, so we've decided to give you a warning today, and you're free to go, basically. So they sat me down there for like 2 hours. It was really interesting. At the end of the day, I didn't have to do any COVID test, didn't have to do any ArriveCan app, didn't have to do any of it, didn't get a fine, just a bunch of threats, basically. So any of you guys from Canada wondering like what it's like if you're a pureblood and you're going over into the States, you want to come back into Canada, that's my experience that I had. So kind of interesting. It seems like they want to kind of scare you into doing all this stuff, paying for a COVID test. I just flat out refused it all, and they didn't give me a fine and they let me go. So figured I'd tell you guys that before I finish this video. Just kind of interesting because it was the first time going over to the States in like 2.5 years. Hope you enjoyed the video. That was kind of fun. I always like searching through junkyards, kind of checking out all the old Volvos that are being placed in the junkyards these days. That turbo diesel car was definitely really cool. You don't see too many of those. It's always kind of fun just checking out junkyard stuff. So lots of stuff to come for the channel, guys. I'm actually going to be doing a part out on the panel wagon. So our local raceway, Mission Raceway, the place that we have all the drift events at, unfortunately they came out with some new rules, and they're going to be requiring a roll cage with door bars if you want to do tandems at the track now. So what I'm thinking, guys, is I think it's time to part out the panel wagon. I have a clean shell that has no rust in it, and I would much prefer to build that car up with no rust in it. There will actually be spots on the ground for us to weld base plates in. The panel wagon is so rusty that I actually couldn't cage that car without an extreme amount of rust repair. Just not anything I'm willing to do for that crappy old shell. So I have a much cleaner shell, going to be doing that. And so that's going to be kind of next on the list. It's going to be a lot of work, full rebuild of the car, basically. Taking every single part off the panel wagon, going to be putting it in that car. Unfortunately, the car won't be paneled up for a little while. I really like the panels on the car. on the panel wagon. I would like to keep that style. I think it's just super unique and looks a lot different than any kind of Volvo I've ever done before. So, but I don't want to do it janky. I don't want to like rivet holes in all over the car to make those panels fit. So I'm going to be, you know, doing it a little bit differently, a little more clean this time. And, you know, hopefully at the end of the day, we're going to end up with a much cleaner car and basically the same setup, just in a much cleaner shell with no rust on it. So that's planned for the near future. But other than that, guys, make sure to check out the Drifts and Lifts store, 40% off everything on the merch store, with the code SWEDSLEDS. So if you want to support the channel, that's a great way to do it. So I'm going to leave you guys there today. Thanks for watching, and make sure to like and subscribe for medium rare Volvo steaks. Peace out.